Welcome to Focus on the Five, conversations with Baldwin County business leaders and entrepreneurs, brought to you by Josh Knoll of Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. And now, Josh Knoll.
Hi everyone, welcome to Focus on the Five, conversations with Baldwin County, Alabama area entrepreneurs and business leaders. I'm your host, Josh Knoll of Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. We are coming to you today from the studios of WABF 1480, located here in beautiful downtown Fairhope, Alabama. Now, before I get started with today's guest, I wanted to let all of our listeners know, and Miss Lori DeBose know, that I really missed you all. I didn't realize how much I would miss doing the show, but we've been gone for a few weeks. But we're back, and I'm glad to be back. So, we're back. All right, so for today's guest, it's generally accepted that there are two words in the English language that don't really go together: love and insurance. But our guest today is going to describe how he is on a mission to bring love and compassion to the business of insurance. So we're going to dive into all that, but before we do that, let's welcome our guest, Chris May of LTN Insurance Services. Chris, how you doing?
I'm great, man. Thanks so much for having me, man.
Right.
I'm excited to be here and sit down with you.
Well, we're going to treat this. I've got a lot of familiarity with you, but we're going to take the listeners on a journey of who you are. So I want to jump right into it. I've heard of State Farm. I've heard of Allstate. I've heard of Farmers. What is LTN Insurance Services? What's it stand for? What's it mean?
Great question. So LTN stands for Love Thy Neighbor. That's a biblical principle that is at the core foundation of our agency. We exist for the purpose of loving and serving others through insurance, and that's it. I mean, simply put, that's what our agency's here for. We just want to love people. We just want to serve them. Insurance is something that everybody has to have. Everybody standing in this room right now has to have it if you own a home, if you own a vehicle, whatever it may be. And we just want to take that process and just love on people and serve them through it.
Perfect. All right. What describe the services that LTN offers?
So really, we can do anything with insurance at the end of it, but except for health insurance right now. Primarily, though, we are home, auto, and small to medium-sized commercial. We also do some life insurance as well, but our main bread and butter is home and like small to medium-sized commercial accounts.
Okay. How did take us through forming the company? Because you're not new to the industry, but the company's fairly new.
It is.
So
brand new.
Walk us through the company, why you chose to go independent. Take us on that journey.
So I worked for a captive agency here in Fairhope for the last 2 years and absolutely loved my time there. The people that I worked with, the guy that I worked for was phenomenal. I can't speak higher of his character, and just so thankful for that opportunity. But I wanted to go independent because I wanted to be able to completely serve my clients. Me and you have sat down and had many conversations about you kind of have the same feelings about, the independent chain. You feel like you can completely, truly serve your client and have your client at heart if you're in the independent chain. We don't have, sales quotas, don't have a certain product that I have to write or anything like that. It's strictly about, hey, what are your needs? How can we meet your needs? And in regards to forming this company, so I have two business partners, two guys that I'm really close with that are really good buddies of mine as well, that they basically handle everything back end. I do everything with the business. So they handle, funding and all that fun stuff, and I handle everything that has to do with insurance. And we sat down, maybe 3 months back or so, and just started kind of having a little bit of conversations and kind of saw the business model, and they, felt really what brought us all together was just the core foundation of just loving and serving people through insurance. I know that can almost sound kind of cliche and cheesy, but genuinely, like, if you get to know us, that's our heart, man.
I don't know if I'd say cliche because everyone's scared to say that now.
Right.
Everybody's kind of distanced themselves from that, where a lot of times it's turned into a transactional in nature, right?
It absolutely has. I think that there's a lot of companies, a lot of bigger name companies that have pushed that 15 minutes can save you 15% or more. And there's nothing wrong with that. We want to be the most competitive. Right. That's always our goal. We have, that's a great thing about the independent space is that I can be super competitive because I don't just have one option that if, hey man, next year at renewal, your premium increased $250, well, that stinks. At our agency, I have the ability to say, hey, I can move that around. We have 4 or 5 other different carriers that I can place that with instead of just purchasing a product from us. Really and truly what you're doing is you're hiring us to manage your insurance products. So we can take a look at things at renewal and move those around and so on and so forth. But really and truly, we wanted to be able to have the customer in mind in everything that we were doing rather than we wanted to serve our customers rather than serve an insurance company.
Do you feel like you're trying to build a relationship business in a transactional industry?
Yeah, to an extent, for sure. I mean, I think that in everything that you do, relationship wins. It doesn't matter if it's in insurance or if it's in car manufacturers, whatever it may be. And the relationship is always going to win. So that is definitely at the core foundation of our agency, that you can't love and serve somebody without at least knowing them a little bit. To an extent, I mean, you can, but
Well, I'm not a rookie anymore. I've been doing this a long time. I think it comes into play in our related industries. When everything's going well, you can buy homeowners, auto, life insurance, disability. You can buy it from anybody when things are going well. What really matters is when things don't go as planned,
Right.
and you've got to use it. Do you have the right company behind you? And do you have a relationship with the person that is your front end on that? Because these are monstrous companies with thousands of customers, right? Do you have someone that can be your advocate to get in your claim process in the way you want it? And to me, that's where the relationship comes into play. And until a computer can figure out that side of it, I'll still have a job.
I agree. I mean, there's a lot of carriers in both of our spaces that have gone very much so digital, very much so similar to Amazon. And we, to an extent, want to be as efficient as that, but we want to have a personal touch to it. If you call us, I mean, there's certain scenarios that I've been working on a few things that have taken, a week to quote here in the last week, and that's killing me because I'm like, time's money. I need to get this back to somebody really quickly.
Right.
There's certain case scenarios that it takes longer, that it may have a longer tailwind or something like that. But for the most part, man, we want to be as efficient as possible. We want to be as easy to do business with as possible. You can text us. You can shoot me a text. I'm going to respond to it. You can, whatever that may be. We want to be active on social media. We want to be active in the community. All of those things as well. And being super competitive, we just want to do it with loving and serving people at mind. And I think that one of the areas that really comes into play is that, as an independent carrier, we have the option of placing business with multiple different people, and we could care less what the commission is that we're making off something. There's certain carriers that'll pay you more commission than others, but man, we're going to do whatever's best for the client. Like, regardless of that, that's not what we're in this for. Money takes care of itself when you care and love on people.
I agree. Well, all right. So speaking of customers and being super competitive, is there a couple examples you can give folks where you think you might be able to help them, a particular customer, a particular situation?
I think that one area in particular that we really are super competitive in is the new gold fortified homes. We have 3 or 4 different carriers that are lights out competitive on them. That is really the only business that we write with them is those gold fortified homes. They're just super competitive on it. And if anybody doesn't know about the gold fortified program, there's a lot of, some home inspectors and some other carriers or some other companies that really pay attention to that as well, that have pumped out a lot of information. Knockout is one in particular that does a really good job of that. But it's just basically it's a way that homes are being built now, that they're built to a higher standard. They're supposed to withstand hurricanes and tornadoes and all of that fun stuff a lot better than, homes that were built in the late 90s or even in the early 2000s. So that's one area in particular. Another is just commercial property. If somebody, is a business owner, owns a business and operates out of a building that they own, we're really competitive on those and have the ability, not just insure the building, but can insure the business, workers' comp, all of that fun stuff as well. So that's really the 2 areas that's our bread and butter.
Love it. That's great areas. Well, let's take a big step back from the specific business. What are some common mistakes you see people making? We'll start with home insurance. That's kind of a big thing around here. What's some common mistakes you might see someone make?
I think one is you might see somebody that has really, really high deductibles, like a 10% wind and hail or even a 5% wind and hail. There's some carriers that will only allow you to write a 5% wind and hail on certain things. But for the most part, having larger deductibles, especially on like newer homes or something like that, is areas that's something that we want to definitely mitigate, is having some large deductibles on homes in particular. But one that I really hit home on would be having just bare minimum limits on your auto policy. So like 25, 50, 25 is the state minimum liability limit. So what that means is that there's 25,000 in coverage per person in an accident, 50,000 per occurrence, and then 25,000 in property damage. Well, if you back into a Tesla in downtown Fairhope or a brand new Mercedes, you're going to do $25,000 worth of damage just from that. So,
my truck.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's one area. And one thing that's really surprising about that 25, 50, 25 is that if you increase to even 100, 300, which is pretty much the bare minimum that I'm willing to write in our agency, that's kind of our starting point. Like we won't write at 25, 50, 25. Nothing against that. Like I said, it's the state minimum limits. It's just, to me personally, I don't feel like it's doing the client right to write that, just because it's so low of coverage that if you have any type of significant accident, I mean, you're going to do triple that damage easily.
Well, all right, so let's talk about that. So my wife, Jennifer, and I, we do everything together. So this year we decided to have surgeries in the same week. And we had totally planned it, right? And we had a high deductible on our health insurance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we survived it, but you mentioned earlier on the homeowners, what's a potential downfall? What's wrong with having, I can tell you what's wrong with having large deductible on health insurance, right? Because when you have back-to-back surgeries, and you're writing some checks. What's the downfall of having a large deductible on a homeowner's insurance policy?
So let's say somebody has a 5% deductible, and just to be easy math, it's a $100,000 house. So 5% of that's going to be $5,000. So if you have like a wind or hail damage occurs to your home, it's going to be a $5,000 deductible. So $5,000 is, relatively speaking, in the context of a home claim, isn't a huge amount of money. It's not a small amount of money. I mean, I wish I had $5,000 just sitting in my pocket right now, but if you start doing the math on that, 5% of a $200,000 house, well, now you're sitting at $10,000, and you keep increasing. Those deductibles can get mighty pricey. So let's say that you just have, let's say we have a storm that comes through here and blows the roof off your house or something like that, and you've got a really, really large deductible. Let's say it's a $10,000 deductible. Well, usually what insurance companies will do, instead of saying, hey, you pay us $10,000, and let's say it's a $20,000 claim, instead of you paying the insurance company $10,000 and them paying you $20,000, they're just going to cut you a check for whatever the damages are. Yeah, whatever the difference is. So they'll cut you a check for $10,000. Well, you're out $10,000 to that roofer,
right,
for whatever the rest of that cost is. The insurance is only going to cover past that deductible. So you would be sitting there, the same thing as health insurance. If you've got a $5,000 to $10,000 claim and you got a $5,000 to $10,000 deductible, then you're going to have to pay the difference between those two.
Understood. Okay. Well, all right. So you had mentioned earlier, blowing the roof off, gold standard, this area. When I moved down here several years ago, I didn't realize that there were differences in wind insurance and hurricanes, and we've got some unique challenges along the Eastern Shore and in Mobile. Can you speak to those, like some of the things you see that the average person may not be aware of, especially if they're new to the area?
Yeah, I moved here in 2010, and then I lived in Mobile from 2010 to 2016, then moved over to this area, and then started kind of learning about insurance. And then, like you said, this is a very different area than other areas of the country. Here, Houston is very similar to us. So is kind of the panhandle of Florida, but because of the risk of storms, primarily hurricanes, named storms, and stuff like that, a lot of companies are going to require you to have either a named storm or a wind and hail deductible that applies when a wind, so hurricane, tropical storm, straight line winds, hail damage, tornadoes, stuff like that, is what that percentage deductible would be. So 3%, 5%, some 10%, 2%, whatever it may be. One of the biggest differences is like a wind and hail versus a named storm deductible. Okay. So like wind and hail deductible is going to apply anytime there is any form of wind or hail damage. So straight line winds, tornado, hurricanes, all going to pay the same thing. A named storm deductible is only going to apply when literally a named storm occurs. So Hurricane Michael, Tropical Storm Alberto, something like that. If that caused damage to your home, it would be that percentage deductible.
Does the person have to pay an extra rider to get that coverage?
So it's usually a little bit more in premium. So let's say if a 3% wind and hail deductible might be, just to use round math, let's say it's $1,000 a year. That named storm deductible might be $1,100 a year or $1,150 a year, but it pays. It's a complete game changer when it comes to the deductible, though. So for example, let's say that you have a wind and hail deductible and a really big windstorm, just straight line wind comes through and blows the shingles off your roof. You're going to be paying that 3%. Well, if you would have had a named storm deductible, that would fall under your all other perils deductible, which is usually $1,000 or $2,500. So you can see that those things,
it matters.
Yeah, it matters a lot.
All right. So on that note, we're going to take a quick break for station identification. For those of you just joining us here on WABF 1480 AM, this is Focus on the 5, conversations with Baldwin County, Alabama entrepreneurs and business leaders. I'm your host, Josh Knoll, and I'm joined today by Chris May of LTN Insurance Services. All right, Chris, so we dived in a little bit on, your background for LTN, how you formed it, the reasons for forming it, and then you get great educational pieces on some of the things that we deal with around here. But it's time to talk about you. So why don't you share with the listener, who is Chris May? What's your story? Where are you from? Did you go to college? It's a good story. Are you married, kids? What's your day? Let's hear about Chris May.
So I am originally from Florence, Alabama, or Tuscumbia, Alabama, to get even smaller. That's like saying you're from Montrose. Nobody knows where that is.
Or Wapapello.
Yeah, exactly. Same as you. So
we'll put them on the map.
I'm about an hour. My hometown's about an hour west of Huntsville, Alabama. I came down here in 2010. I went to South. I played football at South. That's what brought me down here, was playing football there. And I went to school, had a blast there, was there from 2010 to 2015. Got engaged my senior year, 2015, and then got married right afterwards in January of 16. So my beautiful wife and I have been married for, it'll be 4 years in January, which is crazy to say that out loud. But we have a 2-year-old little girl. She'll be 2.5 in January, and she is redheaded and an absolute ball of energy. So she's fun to be around, but usually outside of work, you can catch me as where we met on the basketball court.
Right.
That's usually what I do in my free time. So absolutely enjoy doing that. Shout out to the 5 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday group. If I never would have gotten a part of that, we probably wouldn't have known each other. But that's what brought me down here to this area. And I tell people that I got stuck, after I met my wife, but you really can't get stuck in this area because it's so pretty. It's hard to leave. It's just a beautiful area of the country.
Well, I know your time at South was really important to you. So you played football there, right? Mm-hmm. Developed a lot of relationships. And let's go ahead and plug what you have going there, because you host some things there as well, right?
Yeah, I do. So I am I guess you would, I don't even know what my title there would be. I guess you could say freelance analyst.
Right.
I do some broadcast, color commentary stuff, so I get to talk about football on the radio with them. JT Crabtree is the guy that I do those with, and then me and him also co-host a podcast together called Inside Jag Nation, where we sit down with current staff, current players, former alumni, and stuff like that. To just really, our goal of that podcast was to generate some more connectivity with alumni and the current people that are there. I think that we've done that, and I hope that we continue to do that. So there's a shameless plug for that.
That's all right.
We enjoy doing that a lot. So that, honestly, college changed my life. Football changed my life for the better. If it wouldn't have been for football, honestly, I wouldn't have went to college. School just never really was my forte. I was really, really hyperactive when I was little, so that school and everything never really clicked for me, but sports did. I absolutely loved sports growing up. Still love sports to this day. We're crazy enough to get up at 4:30 in the morning to go play basketball.
Well, I bring up football in part because it allows me to segue into this. Now, some of you all know Chris out there as the nice, clean-cut looking young man. Do yourself a favor and Google Chris May, South Alabama linebacker, and it's awesome. You really look like...
It was a long time ago.
You look like the coolest heavy metal dude ever. It's a great.
That's fair.
That's fair. It's a good look. I know you can't.
I don't know if my hair looks as good as yours does now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, nice comeback. Yeah, it would be hard to pull that look off in business, but it was a great look for college. I wish I'd had the guts to do that.
Well, I tried to talk my wife into letting me cut my hair. Some of you may know who Jared Allen is. He played defensive line for the Minnesota Vikings for a long time.
And the Kansas City Chiefs before that.
He did, yeah, and the Chiefs before that. But he had a mullet, and he had racing stripes and a checkerboard on the other side. I loved it, and I tried so hard to talk my wife in. She was my fiance at the time. I was like, hey, look, I'm cutting my hair after football's over anyways. Let me just do this. She was like, absolutely not. You're not a chick.
Smart lady. Yeah. All right. So I know that while you may be newer to business ownership, you're also someone that they're really diligent with their homework. So part of the show that we always have a conversation about entrepreneurship and things like that. What advice would you have for other young people out there looking to maybe go out on their own or looking at starting a business, being an entrepreneur? What do you got to say?
That's a great question. Man, ask as many questions as possible. That's honestly what I did to get to this point, as far as, learning how to do interview skills or learning how to write a resume. Just ask as many questions as possible. Find somebody that's older than you, that has more experience than you. If you're 27, find somebody that's 28. If you're 29, find somebody that's 30, and just ask them questions. I mean, that's, how our relationship started. I would consider you one of my mentors in business because when I was going through this process, that's what I did. And you were kind enough and awesome enough to, reciprocate that and sit down with me and say, hey, look, this is where I banged my head. And if anything, if you don't learn anything, the way to do something, you can learn how not to do something.
Right.
I mean, that to me has been one of the most impactful things in my life to get to this point of getting to a point of owning and, starting a business is just ask questions. Like just lean on people, man, and collaborate with people. I mean, there's a rising tide raises all ships. So there's plenty of business to go around for everybody.
Well, and I felt like on my, one of my 7 or 9 or 20 different whiteboards that I had, part of my business planning back then was find someone that is viewed as an expert now, not viewed as an expert then.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds simple, but I felt like things were changing so fast in all parts of life, but especially in our line of work. I mean, everything was some things were becoming a commodity. There was social media, there was videos and all that. So my thing was, in the beginning, I felt like I needed to reach out to people that were viewed as an expert in the things I was trying to be good at now and moving forward. Do you feel like you did that too? Do you feel like it helped you, who you talked to? I mean, no offense to the guy that can tell me how things were done 20 years ago, right? There's a certain element of the old school you always want to incorporate because at the end of the day, relationships matter. I don't care what year it is, right?
For sure.
But some of the things were just this time had come and gone. Do you feel like that played into you being able to go independent so young, so fast? How do you think that played in?
100%. I mean, Bradley Flowers is a guy. I mean, me and him are, at the end of the day, we're direct competitors, but he has been ridiculously helpful in this transition for me. I mean, I sat down, the first time me and him met, we sat at lunch for like almost 3 hours and just talked about, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? So on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, you got to find somebody that knows more than you do. If you ever think that you're the smartest person in the room, 1, you're wrong. 2, you need to go to another room.
That's right.
So find somebody that's smarter than you. Find somebody that knows more than you. I mean, you did that. You did the same thing. That's
absolutely.
That's how we knew each other from basketball. But I saw that interview that you and Jason Will did together at Refuge Coffee Shop, and I remember watching that and being like, man, he had the guts to reach out to somebody else. Well, heck, I can do it too. I'm going to sit down, I'm ask somebody else a question and just go from there.
I showed up and Travis showed up with his camera and he said, hey, we're going to go on film in front of all these people. Yep. Okay. All right. Well, all right. So you mentioned you got partners that are working with you on LTN. Obviously, your wife's a huge part of your life. You got mentors. I mean, as we wrap up the business side of it, do you feel like you could have done this on your own, or how important has your support group been for reforming LTN services?
It's been huge.
Insurance services.
Yeah, it's been huge. I would be lying if I told you that I didn't want to do it completely on my own at first. But at the end of the day, I sat down, and when I sat down with my business partners, both of them have owned and operated their own businesses for the last 7 to 8 years or so. So if anything, I really look at them as not just business owners, part owners of this business with me, but also my mentors. They're also guys that help me. I kind of look at them as guardrails, because this, entrepreneurship, business, whatever you want to call it, entrepreneurship's a big buzzword now, but whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, I mean, man, it's a trek. Like it can be difficult. It's really easy to get overwhelmed. It's really easy to get sidetracked. It's a lot
messier than people realize until they go through it themselves.
I didn't realize that until going through this process, because you see a lot of people on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it may be that they just post all this stuff. Entrepreneurship's so great. I'm off it too, and I get to go play with my kids.
Look at me on this boat. And,
and that is so far from the truth of what like owning and operating a business truly is. So I look at both of those guys not just as the other 2 pillars of LTN, but more so they're my guardrails as I'm driving up this mountain. I may bump a guardrail and have a wreck and have to have a front bumper replaced or something like that, but I'm not going to go ravining off this cliff and not know what's going on. So
that's perfectly said.
Yeah, they've been extremely helpful in this. I mean, you've been really helpful. My former boss, Andy Malone at the Malone agency, man, like I was saying earlier, I can't speak higher of his character. So thankful for him and everything that he's done.
He could have handled that totally different. He's been phenomenal.
Yeah, exactly, man. Yep. And just so, man,
I've had a lot of then.
Yeah. I've had a lot of really, really good people around me.
I love it. All right, well, how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Facebook. You can find us on our website's just in the process of getting finished up. You can find me on social media. Everything's going to be LTN Insurance or LTN INS.
Love thy neighbor.
Exactly.
Okay.
LTN as in Love Thy Neighbor Insurance. You can also text me or you can call us at my office line, which is 251-210-2290. You can call or text that number, and I'll get back to you as quick as possible. So
give that, if you don't mind, give that phone number one more time.
251-210-2290 is the number. Like I said, you can text or you can call that number.
Okay, very good. And also on your Facebook business page, that is LTN Insurance Services.
LTN Insurance Services.
Insurance Services.
That's correct.
And they can message you through there. And
Yep,
all
you
that.
can message me through there.
Okay. All right. Well, this I didn't get a chance to warn you ahead of time, but you got a lot of times people see this show and they don't realize how much you are out in the public. Now, they'll meet you and they'll be happy they met you. I think a lot of times people meet you out in public and they're like, oh, I thought you were a bigger deal than this. So my thing,
debatable. Don't cut yourself short.
Yeah. Do you have any upcoming events coming up? Anybody can meet you in person? I know you're super involved with the community.
Yeah, I try to be, man. We have our networking group that we're a part of. I try and stay involved as much as I can in like the young professional stuff. And I have a really good friend of mine that will be at the YP. Well, actually, that'll have already happened when this airs. Sorry.
Well, let's do this. Let's use this, another shameless self-plug, our BNI group, Game Changers, right? You all that follow Chris, make sure you come to a meeting. You can come 2 times without worrying about paying or anything like that. It's a great group, gives people a chance to get to know you better. So, all right, as we start wrapping up, anything in closing?
No, not at all, man. Just thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, man. Really appreciate you and everything that you've been helpful to me personally in this transition. So thank you.
No, you're welcome, buddy. Anytime. If you're a regular listener of the show, then you know that we also film our conversation and release it on YouTube. I can say that. Lori, forgot to tell you that. I'm allowed. Yes, I'm allowed to say I have a YouTube channel finally. Pardon, Facebook and my website, gulfcoastfa.com. So if you're watching this video and you would like to reach out to either Chris or myself, feel free to send us a message on any of those platforms. We will get back to you. Lastly, if you are a Baldwin County area entrepreneur or business person and would like to have a conversation like this one, reach out to us. You'll find my contact info at the end of the show. In closing, I want to thank my guest, Chris May of LTN Insurance Services. He did a great job as always for joining us today. And also, I want to thank our producer, Lori DeBose, and I want to tell you on air that I missed you. So take that for what you will. Yeah. All right. As well as all you out there listening, I am Josh Knoll of Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, and this has been Focus on the 5. Thank you and have a great day. We're out.
Thank you for listening to Focus on the 5. If you are interested in learning more about Josh Knoll and Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, you can find us at gulfcoastfa.com, call 251-327-2124, email josh.knoll@gulfcoastfa.com, or message us on Facebook.
Advisory services offered through Prime Capital Investment Advisors, LLC, PCIA, a federally registered investment advisor. PCIA, doing business as Prime Capital Wealth Management, and Qualified Plan Advisors. PCIA and Gulf Coast Financial Advisors are not affiliated. All information presented is for educational purposes only and is not an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any securities.